The technology is nothing more than a platform to allow you to do things faster, quicker, more efficiently, and design a much more frictionless experience. But at the end of the day, all digital transformations start and end with human data. All of it is data. And how you structure it and you inform the entire organization with that data, that is the collective intelligence of everyone accessible to the individual in a matter of seconds. Now, one of the shift of understanding the 21st century business is to realize that the business is no longer this concept, this idea of we had businesses as a very mechanical, hierarchical sort of organization, top down, layers, this is the middle management, all of these things going out the window.
Hello and welcome to the 10X Blueprint podcast. My name is Simone Knight, your host. And today we have an amazing guest for you, Mr. Marvin Dejean of Gilead Sanders. Let me first give you a little bit about Marvin, because this is going to be an amazing conversation about the future of business and transformation. So Marvin is a leading business futurist. He is a transformational strategist. He is an unapologetic evangelist for outcomes of data-driven innovation for corporate and social challenges. As a senior managing partner at Gilead Sanders, he spends his time helping organizations and individuals take the quantum leap into the 21st century. Okay, so that's a big deal already in itself. He possesses more than 25 years of experience, having held key positions in the corporate world as well as in major nonprofit organizations. He's helped some of the world's largest and most recognizable corporations and government agencies, as well as nonprofits, adapt to changing environments. And to boot, on top of all of that, Marvin is the author of a soon-to-be-released book called The Big Pivot, Transforming Your Business into a 21st Century Digital Powerhouse. I give you Mr. Marvin Dejean. Marvin, how are you?
I'm good, Simone. I'm hearing you talk about my bio. I'm like, who is that?
Marvin, welcome to the podcast. It's so amazing to have you on here. We've known each other for a very long time, and you have been someone that has just been at the top of my list in terms of fulfilling conversations about the future and technology and where we're headed. So to be able to have you on the Blueprint podcast today is just fantastic.
I'm excited to be here. When I heard you were launching this podcast, I couldn't wait to talk to you about it. I didn't know I was going to be a guest, but I am super excited to be here because I love the way you think, Simone, and how you approach the future, especially around marketing. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
As I said, so today we are talking about the future of business. So before we get into it, I always like to have a little fun with my guest, Marvin. I always like to do some rapid fire questions to find out a little bit more about you and get the audience interested in who you are as a person. So you're Haitian and you know good food. So I want to understand, rapid fire, I'm going to ask you a few questions. What's your favorite Haitian dish? And where's the best place in Miami to enjoy it?
Wow, I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm doing this. And I would say probably the best Haitian dish for me by far is legume, which is like a combination of beef or chicken with vegetables like carrots and then cabbage, and it's stewed into this wonderful mixture that you put it on a bed of rice. Oh my God, I could be eating that for days. To tell the truth, when I first came to Miami, the best places were some key restaurants like Chef Creole in Miami that you could, but now there are so many great Haitian restaurants all over Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Pretty much anywhere you go right now, Haitian food is par for the course. I would definitely say Chef Creole for me has always been one of my go-to places for great food.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing. If you could visit any country in the world just alone for the food, where would it be and why?
I wouldn't call myself a foodie, but when I taste good food...
When people say that they wouldn't call themselves a foodie, that they are.
I've already been to this country, but I would go, if they told me just for the food alone, I would go. If I didn't do anything else, just going there to eat, I would say by far South Africa, Johannesburg, and Cape Town, It's been years and I'm still thinking and talking about this food. This was the eclectic mix of European and African food and spices coming together. Mind blowing. Best food I've ever tasted in my life, bar none.
Wow. Okay.
You go to South Africa, have their food, any food. It's awesome.
So let me ask you something that's a little bit more tech focused. As a tech enthusiast, right? What is the coolest piece of technology you have ever encountered during your travels?
Probably I would have to say the Chinese have us hands down so far above and beyond where we are. Their technology of being able to go into one app and be able to pretty much do anything. You can pay, you can order your food, you can get married if you want to. I mean, it's just hands down one of the best apps, multi-use, omni-channel apps. When I went to China to visit, that you could pretty much do anything. You don't need to go out with your keys, your wallet, or anything. That app alone just handled pretty much. And I thought, that's probably the way of the future, where we're probably going to see that kind of version move towards AI, your personalized AI, that just pretty much you'll be using voice or any kind of input element, and then that one AI app will be able to do pretty much anything you want it to do throughout the day. Well, best tech I've ever seen.
Here's my last rapid fire, which is more about you personally. I have a theory that I call first jobs. And my theory, which has always proven to be true, by the way, my theory is that the first paying job that you've had really is a window into who you will become. Okay? So what was your first paying job? Think back.
That is so funny that you said that. I was thinking about that the other day. I would say probably for me, when I was a kid, we all had summer jobs. My real first paying job was with a not-for-profit, and they had hired me for something completely different. And I think I wrote a press release for them. And the CEO was so impressed because they had never had that happen to them before. And he said, "Who wrote this?" I sort of raised my hand and he's like, "Forget whatever you were doing. I want you to start doing just media, marketing, and PR for us, like starting today." And it really sort of launched my career in that whole PR, government relations, marketing that has really marked my career. And it was not even something that I went out and got it as a job. It literally shifted my job because I wrote a press release that I had learned how to write. And it really just launched my whole entire career in consulting with businesses around that whole sphere. So yes, you are probably right in your theory. I think that theory is probably spot on. Definitely.
It's interesting because I have asked that question to at least 20 people, like a bunch of CEOs, people in leadership, and people with 20, 30, 40-year careers. And it's been amazingly correct.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, when you ask people, especially after college, what do you want to be? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, unless you were really focused, like I'm going to be a doctor, right? Or I'm going to be an engineer. But the rest of us were like, we'll figure it out. But I really do think like the career sort of finds you, or you're called upon. It's almost as if like you're immediately being drawn towards what you're innately very good at. So it's almost like sometimes you stumble into it. Sometimes it just calls you. But that first step, when you feel that energy, that synergy, oh, this is who I was meant to be. And you just fall into it and there's flow. I'm not surprised that's how it works out. I agree.
I love that. You have shown yourself to be someone who is very resourceful, someone who is great at helping brands to navigate the future of business and really change their focus on strategy and their approach. So let's get into that futuristic conversation. So first of all, some people listening to this may be wondering, what is a futurist? What the hell is that? So first of all, let's explain what that term really means.
I'm glad you said that because almost 12, 15 years ago when I started doing this work and I was presenting myself as a business futurist, people had no idea what that is. It's starting to come into more into business parlance, But still, there are a lot of people who don't know what a business futurist or a futurist is. And a futurist is nothing more than an individual who, there's formal studies like future studies now that you can take in school, or just learn along the way using specific tools such as strategic foresight or scenario planning, or things that you see to know that trend setting, to know that there are things that are coming down the pike in the future, and you sort of prepared organizations and businesses for that eventual future. So the future, unlike what most people like to think, is not just one future, and it's not a predictable future. The future is based on the decisions that we make today. It's based on trends that are very much in the cone of certainty, meaning, sort of like demographic shift or death numbers or how many people are being born, right? All of those things are trends that we can extrapolate from now until 20, 30, 50 years ago based on what's happening today. So a business futurist or a futurist really just uses these kind of trends to help people understand, here are the things, the possible things that are coming. Here are plausible things that we know are coming. How are you prepared for those kind of shifts, right? So we help governments, we help businesses, we help organizations, and we even help individuals think strategically about those trends and those future, and then making decisions today to be ready for those things.
Fantastic. So now that we laid the groundwork into what a futurist really does, so what are some of the emerging technologies and disruptive trends that you foresee having the biggest impact on business over the next decade?
Back in 2012, I was on the speaking circuit, and I remember speaking about the rise of artificial intelligence back in 2012. And I swear people were looking at me like I had two heads. They had no what are you talking? People hadn't even heard artificial intelligence. They hadn't heard about blockchain. And as a futurist, that's exactly what you do. You stay in that kind of environment and you see these trends coming up. And we were back then, 2012, at the early stages of cloud. And people were still wrestling with cloud. And I was busy talking about artificial intelligence and IoT, which is also another. But people were not prepared for that. And one lesson I learned, just like everything else with the eternal lesson, is timing is everything. And unless it's something that a business has a direct impact or immediate impact on a business, the proverbial burning platform element is at play. Businesses focus on the short term. Whatever is affecting either profit or business at the moment is where they tend to look, which when you are in a static environment, meaning changes happen over decades, like the Industrial Revolution, or even the early stages of the computer revolution, it took decades for things to happen. But I can honestly say probably within the past decade or so, the change has been happening much faster. And we see that rapidity of change taking place with the window closing year after year. So definitely after COVID, we see that change happening. And then year after COVID, we see the rapid changes of the introduction of technology and trends and changes that are happening on a global scale faster and faster to the point where we can barely keep it. So back then, I predicted, and as a business futurist, it's not even a prediction, it's things that you knew were coming in the cone of certainty. We knew that artificial intelligence was going to be a major shift in the market. We knew that IoT, which is the Internet of Things, which is really rising in terms of with the rise of data and information. And we want data and information in pretty much from physical to service to anything that we can get our hands on because of AI. Yeah. We knew that blockchain, with the rise of digital currency, is the next evolution of money. We knew that was coming. We didn't know what form it was going to take, but blockchain was very promising back in 2012, very niche. And until Bitcoin showed up on the scene, no one had really talked about blockchain unless you were in a very niche arena. We knew that automation, not only based in terms of platforms, but we also knew automation with the next rise, which is robotics. We knew that robotics was also going to be something. So all of these massive technologies, these game changers, they were rising individually in their spaces. Now, after COVID, what we're seeing is the convergence of all of these things.
You just said a lot of things that I want to sort of double click on. So COVID was a game changer in so many ways, but definitely in the space of technology. Let's think about it. People knew about Zoom, but now everybody knows about Zoom, right? And Zoom took over during COVID when the school districts in many places across the country decided to adopt Zoom as their technology to continue learning, right? Now, there were other platforms that were doing these video meetings. You had WebEx, Cisco Systems, all of that, that probably had a larger share of the market at those moments. But there was something about that particular platform in terms of ease of use that allowed it for fast adoption and for places where children needed to use it and people of multi-generations needed to use it, that made that the platform of choice for that moment in time, which then, of course, continued, right? Because now you've established all of the process and the environments. You're not just going to switch just like that. And so now we've moved forward with that. NVIDIA is another one that really has been on the rise in terms of AI technology. And we had brands like Intel that were advertising in well-known household names, not so much NVIDIA, but now that is shifted. And NVIDIA is the top thing in going because they're going into these technology platforms that you talked about. So I've heard you say before that the 5 technologies that are impacting the future, we know it, are 1, AI, 2, blockchain, 3, Internet of Things, IoT, 4, automation, and 5, robotics. And you mentioned data as a big deal for all of those. I'll tell you something funny. Just yesterday, I was looking at the internet node in my home, and it was showing me what's using the bandwidth from my home at the different nodes. You know what was using the most bandwidth? And this is a secondary home I have, by the way. So I was looking at this for the secondary home. The thing that's using the most bandwidth is my dryer. It is my dryer because my dryer is connected to the Wi-Fi, the dishwasher. So you can control it remotely to say, okay, run this cycle again, or it's telling me that the cycle is finished or something like that. I never expected that the dryer would be the thing that's using a lot of the. Now, when I say a lot, it's not a lot at the moment that I was looking at it, but of what was running in the house, the dryer was the thing using the most bandwidth. And I thought to myself, wow, that is very interesting. And of course, there's data associated with all of that too. But people don't realize that your printer is using the Wi-Fi, right? Your refrigerator now is using the Wi-Fi. Your stove, these are all the Internet of Things so that people can have that smart home experience. And of course, there's some pros and cons to that, right? You also open yourself up to some hackers. Everybody out there, make sure you got your security turned on your Wi-Fi.
That's right.
Because these are ways into the network of your home, right? As we talk about that, I want you to talk a little bit about what businesses need to do to prepare, right? Because the current business structures may not allow you to elevate into what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. So what do you say about that in terms of obsolescence of certain businesses and what they may need to be thinking about to be able to navigate this digital transformation and automation that's coming?
Yeah, absolutely. It's uncanny that you talk about that, right? So a couple of things to unpack. Number one, look at the data and the information that you have about your home and knowing where the energy consumption was coming from, that automatically made you a smarter homeowner. So you can make the smarter decisions just from that data alone. Now, extrapolate that from an individual to communities, to cities, to company, right? Data is the next oil for us in the 21st century. It is the holy grail. We will not be making decisions without data. So we know that that's coming for the future. That alone is a critical change in how we're going to run organizations and businesses in the future. So automatically, when you start thinking about strategy for your business about the future, you should already be thinking, how are we going to incorporate data in the decision-making that we make, right? So already that's a departure from a 20th century model, which we were doing based on anecdotal elements, or better yet, a lot of information coming from disparate places that you brought together to create a business model. All of these things are going to live or die based on data in the future, and it's going to move much faster. So if you're busy looking at the library or looking through Google trying to find the data, the competition that already has extracted all that data, by the way, using AI to give them a glimpse of the past 20 years of data information, they can make a decision and go to market much faster than you can. So the goal is now, when you are thinking about building a business, or whether you have an existing business and thinking about strategy for the business, you cannot be using a strategy model or blueprint model that's been happening for the past 150 years. Those days are gone. That business model is becoming obsolete. So your strategy can't say, what did we do last year or 5 years ago? And we're going to continue doing that. That is the very same definition of Zoom being able to leapfrog all of the incumbents that were already there and be able to place themselves and position themselves in the market where they could take over that market in a matter of a year or two, right? So when you are doing strategy now from a futurist mindset, you need to be thinking about, how do I strategize from the future, not for the future? And that is a radical shift. I know it sounds simple enough, but most of the time we've been strategizing for the future. So what do we think is going to happen next year? How many clients are we going to get? That's all great. But all it takes is a leapfrog competitor to come in with the technology, with the data, with the understanding of the market much better than you, with the strategic partnership, and take over that market in a matter of minutes, right? Or days, or months, or years. So the goal for you now is your strategy needs to be extremely agile by really understanding, what do we expect the future to be? Radically different than it is today. So how do I prepare my business, not just for today, but for that eventual future that is coming in much faster than it ever has before? So a radical strategy shift will be, how do we understand the future better? And how do we start moving our business towards that future, which is really what we call a future back strategy. Understand the future, move backwards, know where you are today, and start moving your business towards that eventual future, or that future that you've established that is going to happen to your business. That is a fundamental shift in how we run businesses for the future.
That is amazing. And I love what you said about doing strategy from the future, not for the future. That is a really cool quote and a really great mindset to have when you think about the limitations. When I work with my consulting clients on innovation in marketing and consumer engagement, oftentimes I realize that they focus on their current limitations and they're not thinking about the technology that may be out there to help them. And so that is part of my role, is to basically free their mindset and to give them permission to think outside of the box in a radically different way, and allow them to think of, all right, let's not think about what you can't do right now, because what you can't do right now doesn't matter. Let's think about what you want to do, and let's think about the outcomes and the impact that you're creating for your consumers. There is a technology out there to do it. So when you talked about before being too early, and timing is everything, and being too early in terms of talking about the blockchain and AI back in 2002, when people are looking at you like you're crazy, this is where you're saying, all right, well, if you have a product or a need, then you can find the solution. But if you have a solution, it's hard for you to find a product, right? You can't solve a problem that your client doesn't have. So if you realize that they have it, then you have to point that out. As a consultant, that's part of your role, right? But it can't be a solution in search of a client or in search of a product. It's got to be the product in search of a solution, right? So I think that that's important. Now, having said that, back to this question about the digital transformation, how do you help your clients balance the humanization of these technologies, right? And maintaining a human-centric approach to their operations, to their consumer experiences, because there's a big movement towards modernization for a lot of historical societies. Europe, obviously, some of our oldest civilizations, parts of Africa, et cetera. And You mentioned the blockchain, and there's a lot of fintech solutions out there. There's cashless societies and already coming aboard. So how do you manage that and help them to balance that adoption of technology, the modernization, the futuristic approach, and the human-centric design in their new structure?
That's a great question. When we talk to our clients, we can talk about technology, we can talk about emerging trends, we can talk about strategic foresight and all that stuff. That's all great and all. But at the end of the day, all digital transformations start and end with human beings. The technology is nothing more than a platform to allow you to do things faster, quicker, more efficiently, and design a much more frictionless experience. But who's, at the end of the day, who is creating that experience and who's enjoying that experience? It's a human being. We're never going to stop marketing and going after human beings to really either buy our products or our services. And at the end of the day, we can have all the automation we want. Yes, you may even be able to reduce your headcount, but at the end of the day, the human ingenuity, the human collaboration, the human opportunity for human to human contact or understanding the human context will always be done by humans because we understand each other better than any machine can. And machine can mimic a lot of human traits, but it will always miss that element that is very, very human that we understand towards each other. So for me, at the end of the day, we always start with the human part of the digital transformation. So what do we need to do to help people understand that, yes, there's a shift coming, but now we really need to get better at our human skills. We need to really understand what it means to have emotional intelligence. What does it mean to lead a diverse organization? And when I say diversity, I'm not just talking about race, gender. It's also people plus machines, right? So when we take away, it's going to be, you're a leader and you're talking to a team of diverse people from all over the world. By the way, it's going to be global, not just local. You're going to have your marketing person in Taiwan. You're going to have your CRM person or whoever else in Alaska. It's going to be a diverse team. Plus, on top of that, you bring in AI, which is going to be part of your team as well, and allowing people and enabling people to be able to do things faster, quicker, and go to speed to market because the competition will be global. It will be global. So the idea for you as a leader, you're going to have to be able to understand all of these things and be able to manage all that. So that requires you as a leader, the first element for you is to be self-aware of yourself, your strength, your capabilities, your ego, being able to put that at the door. It's no longer just being able to lead people or things or organizations without really understanding the impact that you have on others. So the first training that we do whenever we talk about digital transformation is mindset shift. Mindset shift for leaders, mindset shift for the employees, mindset shift for the people who are going to be running the organization. It's like the difference between someone who'd been farming for generations, and then all of a sudden the next generation is now working in factories during the Industrial Revolution. You're no longer planting seeds. You're now waking up at the crack of dawn to go milk the... No, it's a very different kind of environment and context. So your mindset had to shift. Same context here. We need to understand that we are moving into a time of human evolution where technology is going to be just things we used to see in the movies and we never imagined could be possible. It's going to be possible. And the speed and the element of the human to human connection is never going to go away. If anything, we're going to double down on human capabilities in order for us to be able to keep up with the speed, the scale, and the efficiencies that machines are going to bring to us, right?
Let's talk a little bit about some of these use cases. So when I look at some of the things you were talking about with this human-centric approach and the humanization of technology and all of that, I know that there are many people who are afraid that technology is going to take over their jobs, that they are going to be left behind. Maybe they haven't started to upskill yet, which is so important that you do start to upskill. And there's so many free training opportunities out there from Google, from Amazon, that will help you in terms of cloud services and understanding how to do prompt engineering. And there are these free, even Harvard has some free courses out there on this, folks, that you can Google and you can find. When I think of all of that, I want to talk about some of the use cases that you're seeing in terms of technology and how it's being applied and how people can begin to prepare themselves, not only themselves as an individual, but also how business leaders can start to prepare their team for these changes in technology, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, those use cases and what businesses can start to do.
So we're already seeing use cases all over the place where the technology is already becoming very, very critical for organizations. A good use case that I read recently, which was very interesting for me, was JP Morgan Chase, as the investment banking side of their business, really is using AI like ChatGPT or other of these generative AI platforms internally, right? So it's a closed platform. And they've uploaded all the historical information and data from all of their chief equity, chief investment officer for the past 20, 30 years. Now think about this. You're a rookie investment banker and you're coming in, and let's say you have a big client and you have no idea how to sell, what to sell, where to sell, et cetera, et cetera. Now you have access to all of that information from all past investment bankers and their years of experience at your disposal now. You can see patterns, you can see what they did, what they sold. I mean, all of this information now is at the tip of your fingertip, just accessing that data internally. So this is what we call harnessing the collective intelligence of an organization since its inception. This is, again, another case example of why data becomes so critical for business. It is the gold. It is oxygen for businesses of the future. Your data, whether it's structured data, unstructured data, quantifiable data, qualitative data, all of it is data. And how you structure it and you inform the entire organization with that data, that is a collective intelligence of everyone accessible to the individual in a matter of seconds. Now think about that. You know, before, when somebody had institutional knowledge in a business and they retired or they left, they walked out with that institutional knowledge. You are trying to capture that in some wiki and hopefully he mentored somebody, but you're getting just a small piece. Now think about this. If I'm a JP Morgan Chase investment banker, I can have access to the intelligence, the expertise, and the knowledge of someone who had been in the business 30 years ago. And maybe he has passed away, but all the information and the data that they left, I now have access to that. Think about the continuity for the business, the continuing to grow and to shape and to pivot quicker just based on that knowledge and the data. That's just one piece of use case. And the use case is using the technology, using data, using information is just proliferating faster and faster. So think of an element of a virtuous circle that the higher it goes up in the circumference, the faster the knowledge and the speed is going to happen. That is a classic example of how the future is going to look like, right? We're talking about rapid understanding, rapid decision-making. If we think things are fast now, we haven't seen anything yet. This is coming at a bullet speed, right? But again, this is why the technology is going to play a pivotal role. This is why people in diversity in terms of thought, understanding, perspective, being able to make decisions rapidly is going to become critical. These are all the elements in terms of when you're talking about from a business futurist perspective and looking at all these things in the cone of certainty that businesses who want to survive, businesses who want to become the intelligent organizations of the future, you need to start shifting right now, because there will come a time when that window is closed, and forget about catching up or trying to shift when that prevailing wind has gone by. It's going to be almost quasi impossible for you to catch up in your industry.
So what I'm hearing from you is a very clear theme, right? Of doing business for the future. Doing business from the future, not for the future, right? That's the very clear theme. Doing business from the future, not for the future. The second thing is to leverage the collective intelligence of your business from current employees, past employees, knowledge bases that you have, and using that data to be able to create a platform that informs the future of your business. It becomes your own internal encyclopedia, right? And this is essentially what is happening with ChatGPT and the other generative AI solutions that businesses are bringing in that are combing through their data, their collective intelligence, and creating these internal databases that people can query and then speak in the business voice and to serve their clients. And that already is a huge competitive advantage for any business to be able to have that database and have it put together in a way that it is reducing the brain drain of anyone who may be leaving the organization, being able to capture and retain that information. That is definitely key for that. Now, the third thing I hear you saying is about the technology that is already around us, the Internet of Things, blockchain, financial solutions, anything that is allowing us to be able to engage our consumer on a more immersive basis. And these are some of the areas where I'm working with my clients in terms of this immersive technology and being able to increase or improve consumer engagement. And when I think about all of this that we're talking about today, there's one big thing that it involves and that everyone needs to get right. And that big thing is collaboration. It needs collaboration to work. And it needs to be able to use this data for predictive modeling, right? For areas where you're understanding the needs of your future client and being able to adapt to that right now. So let's talk a little bit about that collaboration piece of how you're building that collaboration piece to create agility in today's business environment and how to create that culture of innovation with collaboration to facilitate the digital transformation. What suggestions would you have for the leaders listening to this podcast?
That's a very, very perceptive observation, Simone. So when my early days, when I started doing this work, this consulting work, I did digital transformation. My focus as I was building out a strategic roadmap to help companies think about what are the areas where they need to spend their time, their money, their resources, and their people. And just like everybody else, I just assumed it was going to be the technology, the strategy, your people. And lo and behold, for the first couple of years, I kept failing tremendously. And it was always the same pattern. I was introducing the concepts, people were exactly in gung-ho, but then somewhere along the line, it just stopped. I mean, ceiling, not going any further. And I finally realized that one of the areas of the bottleneck happened to be middle managers who felt threatened that as their teams became more agile and really going speed to market, they were like, what's my role here? What am I supposed to be doing? My role was supposed to supervise these people, and now they're telling me they're autonomous, right? And they just need to know what the goals and the objectives are, and they don't need me. I'm just here as a tackle and block kind of person. So they killed any kind of talk about digital transformation. The other bottleneck happened to be the top leadership. The top leadership gave a good head nodding around digital transformation, but they had no understanding what that meant. And they were like, yes, that's great, digital. But then when they're like, it was time, they went right back to what they've done. They're being engaged on productivity, their numbers, and that's what they focused on. They didn't even think about the future. So really what the light bulb went off for me eventually was, listen, all of these things in terms of critical space for where businesses need to spend their time, money, resources, and people means absolutely nothing without the layer foundation, which is mindset shift. Without mindset shift, you have no transformation at all. Meaning, mindset shift requires a lot of different things. One of the shift of understanding the 21st century business is to realize that the business is no longer this concept, this idea of we had businesses as a very mechanical, hierarchical sort of organization, top down, layers, this is the middle management, all of these things going out the window. Cannot. In a very static environment, that's like a big tractor trailer or big Titanic moving, that's great for a static environment where, again, changes happen in decades, right? But when you move into an environment where the context is completely different, things are happening at the speed of thought, speed of a big Titanic is exactly that. It's going to hit the iceberg and it's going to go down. So you really need to be thinking about agility. And for you, the first step towards transformation is understanding this new context and this new form of the business. The business is now an organic, growing, learning organism, meaning the people, the data, the partners, the information, both internal and external, really drives the business. And the business can pivot in a matter of seconds to days based on the incoming data. The business of the future is going to be a 24/7, 365, 7 days a week business. Meaning if the data, like a weather pattern, or there's a strike somewhere halfway across the world that's going to impact your supply chain, you know that in a matter of seconds, and you can make decisions about your product, your service, your customer in a matter of nanoseconds. That's the business of the future. That's the intelligent organization of the future. So something that's hierarchical and very mechanical can't survive in something like that. So the first mindset shift is to help people understand our view and context of the business needs to change. It's no longer a Titanic. It is a very adaptive mammalian sort of organism that you are a small part of. But in order for it to work, all of these pieces need to work together. So the idea of silos, like this is the marketing department, this is the sales department, those things can still exist. But if there isn't a high level of communication and data flow happening in all that, you cannot survive that context. No way. In the organization that creates information flow, data flow, business flow, up and down and laterally from inside the organization is going to be the business that wins this game. So for you, collaboration is no longer, oh, it's nice to have, let's collaborate in order for us to focus on the mission. It is a critical part of business infrastructure. So meaning the lower you can bring the barrier between organizational departments, where collaboration, or what I like to say, bridges between departments are being not only built, but solidified and critical in terms of, don't tell me you're not talking to the marketing team if you're the sales department. Don't tell me you're not talking to HR. Everyone needs to be talking to each other. And we need to understand, what are we trying to accomplish? What are our objectives? Everybody has their specific part of that objective. And we work together in order to create that ultimate customer experience, that ultimate growth, and that ultimate profit margin. Otherwise, you're dead in the water.
You've just said a lot of interesting things that really resonate with me throughout my career, because I am an engineer who's now a marketing executive, and my focus is on innovation, data strategy, and bringing that together with technology and creativity. I was never good at staying in my lane. I was never good at staying in my lane because my strategies would always cross over from technology into marketing, into communications, into operations, because all of those pieces work together. So now as I'm working with brands that want to create these immersive experiences with AI or AR or bringing automation and so forth, it is marketing who is saying we want to engage the consumer on a different level. And yes, we do need to bring in the IT group, because the tech stack is important to how all of this is implemented from a marketing perspective. And the data strategy has to be brought to bear on that. And how is that going to be engaged with the product marketing aspect of it? And then how are we communicating all of this in terms of our brand identity and the community, and how we building communities of our clients and consumer base with this. So what you're saying to me about the business of the future, having to work across these places that are usually silos, is really, really important for any business who is serious about not being obsolete to think about how are you unifying your business strategies and your initiatives in a way that allow you to collect first-party data, enrich the data with third-party information, bring in that information and use a tech stack that will allow you to share that information across your organization, and then create strategies that allow you to adapt to what's happening in the future. Absolutely, 100%. I love what you're saying about that. You're constantly looking ahead, Marvin. So what really excites you about all of this cool stuff happening in the future? Because as you said, you're living your life 10 years from now. So, so 10 years from now, what's really cool and happening? I have some things that excite me, but I want to hear from you what you see is happening and some things that businesses should be thinking about what's coming.
When I think about the future and when we study the future or plausible futures, right? One thing is absolutely clear in terms of our evolution, in terms of the evolution of the market. This is going to be a highly technologically driven society. We're going to become a technologically driven species on this planet. And we're talking...
You said become? You don't think that we already are?
We haven't even scratched the surface.
Are we going to evolve into beams of light?
That might be a little bit further down. I tend to be a little bit more conservative, let's say, in the next decade or so, or next couple of decades. We're going to be, for the first time in our lifetime, probably an interstellar species, meaning we probably will have colonized at least the moon, if not Mars, or any other planet in that interstellar galaxy. We're going...
And you think 10 years?
Oh, yeah. I think the technology is moving probably 10, I would say if I had to guesstimate, probably between 10 to 30 years. I think the technology is going to move so fast if we can avoid any other kind of technological destruction. But that's a topic for another day. But yeah, if we make it, we're going to be most likely an interstellar species. We're going to probably have technologies that can do things that we can barely ever imagine. We're probably going to eradicate a lot of diseases that are currently known to us right now, such as cancer or anything like that. Just the emergence of nanotechnology like CRISPR is already showing us where the future of healthcare is most likely going to be. Add to it AI and any other technologies on top of those things. The future of our species, whether it's business or societal or even global, is convergence. Convergence of everything that has been working towards one whole of being able to spread information, data, people, organizations, all under one platform in a matter of speeds that we can barely imagine, nanoseconds. So think about your business. Think of the convergence of, for example, of blockchain, AI, digital currencies, in the capacity to, let's just say, translate information from one language to another. Just these four elements alone will allow you as a business to do business anywhere around the world, anytime, anywhere. You have a product, you have a service that someone in South America needs it, right? They go to your website, the website automatically is in Spanish, converts everything to them in real time. In terms of digital currency and digital payments, it's going to be done on the blockchain. The blockchain is going to verify digital identities, saying who they are and who we are, and being able to do that in a manner of nanoseconds. And then when the transaction happens, it lives on the blockchain, meaning from now until whatever the blockchain no longer exists, that transaction is recorded. So now you know exactly who has ownership. It happened in a matter of seconds. I can transfer information, data, or even assets from one person to the next. And it doesn't even need to physically change hands because on the blockchain, it's recorded as a transaction. The future is where transactions and experiences happen in nanoseconds. So I don't need third-party intermediaries. Peer-to-peer transactions are going to happen faster. I can buy a product here in today and then be selling it 30 minutes later or 10 minutes later to some other party.
But can I do that now? can do that now, right? I can buy something right now and resell it. People are doing that with their sneakers, right? with the newest Jordans or whatever the case.
Right. But think about that, but 10x, right? No pun intended, but 10x. Let's just use your example. It's a pair of sneakers. I own a pair of sneakers and I sell that pair of sneakers on the blockchain, right? That ownership, that pair of sneakers could probably change ownership 20 times in the next hour or the next 30 minutes because people on the blockchains can decide to sell. And in the blockchain, as long as the transaction happens, can say exactly who is the current actual owner of those pair of sneakers. And whoever owns it at the end may or may decide I want the physical pair of sneakers or I just want the ownership of it. And with that ownership, I can rent it, I can sell it, I can do whatever, and it's an asset class.
So we didn't touch a lot on NFTs, but you're going there right now in terms of this ownership. So in the next 10 years, do you see NFTs being more of a thing, or is it just kind of like a fad that's passed by? Because I say this because there was a lot of hype over NFTs with certain big brands, Bored Ape Yacht Club and all of these places, and art, in air quotes, NFT art and so forth. Do you see that really getting bigger or becoming less of a thing where instead of owning a Van Gogh in real life, you own the NFT of that Van Gogh and the blockchain shows that you have the ownership of it and maybe there's a limited production of that. So instead of a poster art, you now have the NFT of it, which has some more value, increases in value, and maybe people are using it and hanging it in their mansion in the metaverse, in the sandbox or something. I mean, do you see that thing is really going to grow more? And should small businesses start to commoditize some of the things that they have into NFTs?
So there's two trends that you need to think about that can really give you an indication of where things are going, right? The first of those trends is the idea of a dual or a hybrid world that people are going to live in is absolutely true. We're going to have in IRL, in the real life, what we call real life or physical interactions, and we're going to have digital avatars. The virtual world is only going to get so much better. As case in point, which you can see what Facebook or Meta is doing with the metaverse. It's only going to get better. Eventually, probably within the next couple of decades, we're going to be able to do this blogging element purely on a virtual side. And you're going to look exactly like you look there, or I can completely change my avatar and look completely different. So it's going to become almost immersible to the point where you won't be able to tell the difference if you really don't have a tell, right? It will probably develop a tell to eventually to say this was virtually versus IRL. So that trend is already way coming down the pipe. So we know that the virtual world is going to become just as important as the real world for the next generation of kids. Next generation doesn't even see the difference, whether they're in their AR, VR headsets or they're playing video games. The virtual world is becoming something else, a real life phenomenon for them. People are going to be able to go to work on the virtual world as opposed to IRL. I don't have to physically, I'm like, I'm going to go do my job in the virtual world. Now I'm going to sit and put on my AR, VR, and then be able to work wherever I am, anywhere in the world. So that's a first trend. The second trend that you're going to realize is that asset classes, like what we know as physical assets, like money or painting and all those things are slowly going to start making their way into a virtual asset class. So really the only thing that's going to separate that virtual asset class is ownership. And the only way you're going to be able to identify with certainty about digital ownership is going to be a ledger that is blockchain that can actually authenticate the ownership of that particular asset class. Like you said, once that virtual world becomes something of a reality and my ownership becomes something that I can authenticate anywhere through the blockchain, then we can see things like NFTs. NFTs, as we know them today, I would like for people to understand them the same way that, remember when we first had the emergence of internet and we had the early adopters trying to build businesses like pets.com that totally collapsed, right? That was the hype of the market. And people said, the internet was a fad and and then now you see Amazon's, you see Google, right? So when that hype cycle goes down, what emerges really is a much more robust, much more mature business model that now has taken all the lessons of the early adopters to really create something that is sustainable. So NFTs will show up again, but probably in a very completely different version. But as the metaverse, as digital currencies and digital identities and authentication on the blockchain become more solidified, NFTs will now emerge as something that more of an asset class that people can own and barter and trade without actually even owning the physical element itself. So when you talk about what's happening in the next 10 years and the next 20, 30 years, this is the kind of world that we're going to see emerge. And that next generation is going to feel absolutely at ease, comfortable. So when you're marketing your business in the future, you're not only going to market in IRL, but you're also going to be marketing virtually. And you're going to be selling things that are IRL, but also this virtual, what we call a digital twin in the virtual world. You're going to be selling those things and creating a digital twin of your business in the virtual world, right? So those things are things that are already in the cone of certainty as far as what we see coming down the pike in the future. And you need to know that. That's why strategizing from the future, it becomes so much more important in terms of prototyping and getting ready for that future when it shows up.
Well, we are going to leave it right there. That is a lot of information, a lot of things to think about in terms of how you prepare your business and yourself as a professional for the future. And once again, strategizing from the future, not for the future. Convergence. The future is about convergence of these different technologies, the blockchain and fintech and AI and AR and the metaverse and the Internet of Things. And it's a lot to think about and a lot to be excited about. So Marvin, for anyone listening that would like to get in touch with you and maybe have a discovery conversation about things that they should be thinking about for the future of their business, how do they reach you?
Yeah, so it's easy. We're online. You can go to GileadSanders.com, which is GILEAD, Sanders, SANDERS.com. It's easy to get us. You can also email us at info@GileadSanders.com. And we're also both on LinkedIn, or myself on LinkedIn, the business is on LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. And they can get access to all of these omni channels to be able to reach us. And we're more than happy to talk to someone about how they can strategize from that.
Absolutely. And I know, remember that you said that you have a book coming out, so they can follow you on LinkedIn so they can find out when your book is available for purchase. So Marvin, thank you so much for joining us today on the 10X Blueprint podcast. The information you shared is invaluable and you never disappoint. So, all right, until next week, everyone, have a great day.